Welcome to Science Beyond Sleep, a quiet place where we explore the deepest questions of the mind, the body, and the universe, one peaceful thought at a time. Tonight's journey takes us into one of the most mysterious forces we've ever encountered: consciousness. What is it? Where does it come from? And how does it shape the way we experience everything? If you enjoy these slow, thoughtful explorations, I'd love for you to share your feedback in the comments below. Let me know what you felt or what you'd like to explore in a future episode. Now take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. What is consciousness? Close your eyes for a moment. Now, become aware that you've closed your eyes. That's simple. Shift. The awareness of your own awareness is where this journey begins. That we often think of consciousness as obvious. It's the background of everything we experience. The feeling of being here, now, inside your own thoughts. It's not a sound or a shape or a thing you can hold in your hand, but it's always with you. It's what allows you to hold anything at all. And yet, for all its familiarity, consciousness is one of the greatest mysteries we've ever faced. Philosophers have asked about it for thousands of years. Scientists have measured, modeled, and mapped it. But no one can fully explain how something like a brain, soft, wet, physical tissue, gives rise to something as immaterial as experience. You are not just a body reacting. You are aware of reacting. You feel things. That's what makes consciousness so strange. It's not just about thinking or reacting. It's about feeling like something. There is something it is like to be you, to be awake, to be alive. And we still don't understand why. This puzzle is often called the hard problem of consciousness. It was named that way for a reason. Most scientific questions are about behavior, function, or structure. We can ask how the heart pumps blood. We can ask what the lungs do. But with consciousness, we're asking something different. That we're asking, why does any of this feel like anything at all? We know the brain handles inputs. It receives signals from the eyes, ears, skin, and body. It processes information, sends commands, adjusts posture, changes breathing, remembers, forgets. These parts can be studied, tracked, explained. But somewhere along the way, a silent shift occurs. Information becomes experience. Light becomes vision. Sound becomes music. And that transition, from mechanism to meaning, is where the mystery lives. Consciousness isn't just your thoughts. It's the stage on which your thoughts appear. It's the space that allows a thought to come and go while you stay behind, watching. But who is that you? Is there a separate self behind the thoughts? Or is consciousness itself the illusion of someone watching? These are the kinds of questions that can quietly echo in the mind, not to disturb you, but to slow you, to soften the edges of certainty, to invite curiosity without the pressure of an answer. Now, imagine you're looking at a beautiful sunset. You see warm colors spread across the sky. You hear birds in the distance. You feel the breeze on your skin, sensors in your eyes and ears, and skin send electrical signals to your brain. But how does that become a feeling? How does it become beautiful? How does it become you, standing there, witnessing? The truth is, we don't know that. We can scan your brain and see patterns of activation. We can point to neural pathways, chemical reactions, and synchronized brain waves. But we can't explain why or how those processes create the feeling of being alive inside a moment. Some scientists believe consciousness will one day be explained the way other things are, through structure, systems, and patterns. Others believe it may be something entirely new, something fundamental like space or time, not made from anything else, but simply a basic ingredient of reality. It's possible that consciousness doesn't emerge from the brain, but is filtered through it, the way light passes through glass. That's a more speculative idea, but it's worth noting. We still don't have a full theory of what consciousness is, much less where it begins or ends. And yet, we know it when we feel it. You know the difference between being awake and being asleep, between paying attention and daydreaming, between watching and simply reacting. Even in dreams, you sometimes become aware, lucid, and that awareness becomes a kind of awakening inside sleep itself. Consciousness is not a switch. It's not either on or off. It moves. It deepens. It fades and brightens. It shifts depending on mood, focus, exhaustion, emotion. Some days you feel sharp and alert. Other days you feel slow, foggy, distracted. But in both cases you are still there. Some part of you, Quietly noticing. In this way, consciousness is less like a light bulb and more like a flame. It flickers, but it burns. It dances, but it stays. It responds to wind and space and time, but it never fully disappears. Even in the deepest sleep, something remains. Some dim pilot light, always on. This awareness, this presence, is what makes your experience yours. No one else can step inside your mind and see the world the way you do. No one else can feel exactly what you feel. Consciousness is solitary and shared, lonely and connected, personal and universal. A paradox wrapped in experienced. As you listen now, consider this. You are not just hearing this story. You are aware of hearing it. And you're aware that you're aware. That's the mirror turning inward. That's the loop that defines the mind, not just a machine reacting, but a flame noticing its own flickered. That's where we begin. The brain that knows itself. The brain is often called the most complex object in the known universe. It weighs just under 3 pounds, and yet it contains over 85 billion neurons, each with thousands of connections. These connections, trillions of them, form the basis of thought, memory, movement, and identity. But among all the amazing things the brain can do, perhaps its most mysterious ability is knowing that it exists. Imagine this. A collection of cells somehow becomes self-aware. It not only processes information, it notices the processing. It reflects on itself. It wonders what it is. This is what makes the human brain so unusual. It doesn't just react. It reflects. You can think about your own thoughts. You can imagine what someone else might be thinking. You can even doubt your own beliefs, revise your memories, question your sense of self. No other known structure in the universe does this. And yet, your brain does it effortlessly, moment after moment. Scientists have long tried to trace which parts of the brain are responsible for consciousness. And while there is no single consciousness center, certain regions appear to play key roles. The thalamus, for example, is like a central relay station, filtering and organizing sensory input before it reaches your awareness. The prefrontal cortex helps with planning, decision-making, and self-reflection. The posterior hot zone, a region toward the back of the brain, has been closely linked to the vivid, integrated nature of conscious experience. And the claustrum, a thin sheet of neurons buried deep within the brain, has been called a potential orchestra conductor, synchronizing different parts of the mind into a unified experience. These structures work together in an intricate dance, like an invisible conversation that never stops. But even if we can map the circuits, we still don't know how the feeling emerges. Why does certain brain activity feel like fear? Why does another pattern feel like joy or curiosity or déjà vu? Why does anything feel like anything at all? This is where science meets its edge, where observation ends and mystery begins. The challenge lies in something called the explanatory gap, the space between brain activity and subjective experience that we can track electrical signals. We can measure chemicals, but we still don't know why those physical processes produce an inner world. And yet, that inner world is the only world you've ever known. Every sight, every memory, every hope and fear, all of it arises within. Your mind, your brain doesn't just run the body. It creates the universe you live in, not the physical world, but the experienced one. And even more curiously, the brain doesn't feel pain. There are no pain receptors inside the brain itself. That a surgeon could touch your cortex with a scalpel and you wouldn't feel it, but you might remember a moment from childhood. You might laugh. You might cry, because in those folds of tissue, the self is hiding. When you think about your thoughts, when you notice your breath, when you ask, who is noticing? That's your brain watching itself. And maybe that's where consciousness begins, not in the electrical sparks, but in the moment the sparks notice they're sparking. The brain that knows it has a mind, the mind that wonders what the brain is, the loop that folds in on itself, quietly, endlessly. There is something profound about this realization. You are not separate from your brain, and yet, you feel like you are. You feel like a passenger, observing, thinking, choosing. But if the brain is creating the passenger, then who is really driving? This is where consciousness becomes more than just a function. It becomes a question, a mirror, a mystery. A brain that knows itself is not just a machine. It's a storyteller. A witness. A dreamer. And maybe that's what we are too. Dreams that woke up. The illusion of the self. Take a slow, deep breath, and as you do, ask yourself a question. Who is breathing? It feels simple. I am, you might say. But who is I? Where does that voice come from? The one that just answered, for something we rely on every day. The self is strangely hard to locate. You can find your heart beating in your chest. You can trace nerves and muscles through your arms. You can point to memories, to preferences, to opinions. But you, the one who thinks, chooses, and watches it all, you seem to vanish the closer you look. This is the great paradox of the mind. The self feels real, yet disappears when examined. Modern neuroscience suggests that the self may not be a single, fixed thing, but a construction, a kind of mental shortcut, a useful illusion. Just like the brain creates the feeling of motion in a movie by flashing still frames quickly, it may create the feeling of a stable identity by stitching together thoughts, sensations, and memories, moment by moment. In this view, there is no single I watching behind your eyes. There is only a process, a pattern, a rhythm of thought that feels like a person. Some scientists call this the narrative self, a story the brain tells about who you are. It includes your name, your history, your relationships. It has a past. It imagines a future, and it helps you navigate the world. But this story isn't always accurate. In fact, it's often rewritten. Every time you recall a memory, you subtly change it. Every time you think about your identity, you reinforce certain patterns and ignore others. The self is not a solid statue. It's a river, always flowing, always shifting. And yet, it feels stable. It feels like you've always been you, even though your body has changed, even though your thoughts, dreams, and beliefs have evolved. This sense of continuity is comforting. It gives us a place to stand. But what happens when that illusion begins to soften? In meditation, some practitioners report moments where the self seems to vanish. There's still awareness, still experience, but no narrator, no watcher, just being. And oddly, these moments are often described as peaceful, not frightening, not empty, but full, like the weight of trying to be someone has gently lifted. Could it be that the self is not required for consciousness? Could awareness exist without the constant whisper of identity? It's a strange idea, and one we often resist, because the self gives us meaning, motivation, goals. It allows us to say, I love, I remember, I hope. But just as the sky doesn't depend on clouds to exist, awareness may not depend on a self to be present. And maybe, in sleep, we feel this most clearly. When the voice of the self fades into dreams, when identity melts into symbol and sensation, and we drift, gently, in a space beyond names. You are still there, but not the you who answers emails or checks the clock. Not the you who remembers what day it is, but a softer you. A wider one. The part of you that simply experiences. And perhaps that's the deeper truth. You are not the story. You are the space the story happens in. Not the character, but the screen. And knowing this, not as a fact, but as a feeling, can bring a quiet kind of freedom. You don't have to hold the self tightly. You can let it float, let it breathe, let it rest. Because even without it, you are still aware, still present, still here. Layers of awareness. Close your eyes again and ask yourself, am I fully awake right now? Not just awake in body, but in mind. Awareness isn't a single switch that flips on or off. It's a spectrum, a flow, a gradient of being, from full wakefulness to drowsy daydreams to deep, dreamless sleep. Our consciousness moves through layers, fluid, silent, mysterious. In the brightest state of alertness, your senses are sharp. You respond quickly. Thoughts are clear, organized, present. This is the state most people call consciousness in everyday life, the version of you that acts, speaks, remembers. But even here, not everything is conscious. Much of your body functions below awareness: breathing, digestion, balance, and even your thoughts come from places you don't control. They appear on their own, like waves rolling onto shore. Dip a little lower, and you enter the drifting space of daydreams. Here, awareness is soft. It blurs that you're awake, but thoughts take on a dreamlike quality. You lose track of time. One idea melts into another. This is the in-between, a gentle fog of semi-awareness that go deeper still, and sleep begins. Sleep itself contains layers. The light stages, where thoughts still flutter and sounds from the world leak through. Then the deep stages, where the body becomes heavy, still, and unaware, but something remains, because within sleep, another kind of consciousness emerges, dreaming. When you dream, the brain is active. It creates people, places, stories, all from nothing. Your eyes are closed. Your muscles don't move, but inside, a world is unfolding. Point one that feels real, even as it follows no rules, and sometimes in rare moments. You know you're dreaming. This is lucid dreaming, a state where awareness returns within the dream. You realize the illusion, but continue to float inside it, like stepping behind the curtain of your own mind. This shows something important. Even in altered states, something is watching. Even in the absence of full control, some part of you remains present, and beyond dreaming lies deep sleep, the kind with no thoughts, no images, no awareness of time. And yet, your brain is still active, resting, resetting, processing, and when you wake, you return. You don't remember being nothing, but you know time has passed, consciousness faded, then returned. Scientists are still exploring how this works. What is the difference between sleep and unconsciousness, between a sleeping brain and a silent one? Some surgeries use anesthesia, a kind of engineered unawareness. Under anesthesia, the brain stops forming conscious experience. You don't just forget what happened. You weren't there for it at all. And in comas or vegetative states, things become even more complex. Some patients seem unresponsive, yet later report hearing voices, sounds, fragments of thought that we're learning that consciousness can hide. It can shrink, retreat, wait in stillness. That it's not always gone. Sometimes it's just deeper than we can reach. Even in meditation, this becomes clear. The more you quiet the mind, the more subtle layers of awareness begin to emerge. You begin to notice the space between thoughts, the texture of silence, the feeling of simply being here without needing to think about it. Oh, what does all of this mean? It means that consciousness isn't fragile. It isn't binary. It flows like water seeping through the cracks of experience. And even when it dims, it returns like a tide, like a breath. You are not always fully present, but some part of you, some quiet presence, is always there, watching, waiting, drifting, being. Split brain, two minds, one body. Now, let's imagine something curious. You're sitting at a table. Your right hand picks up a spoon. Your left hand grabs a fork. Nothing unusual, but then your right hand starts to button your shirt. Your left hand unbuttons it. You laugh, but something in you knows these hands aren't always in agreement. This isn't fiction. It's a real phenomenon. And it begins with a surgery. In the mid-20th century, some patients with severe epilepsy underwent a rare procedure, the corpus callosotomy. In this surgery, doctors severed the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerves connecting the brain's two hemispheres. This was done to prevent seizures from spreading across the brain, and it worked. But something unexpected happened. These split-brain patients seemed fine at first. They could walk, talk, work, but under certain tests, something remarkable appeared. It was as if each half of the brain had its own thoughts, its own desires, its own awareness. Each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body. The left brain moves the right hand. The right brain moves the left. But more than that, each hemisphere also processes different kinds of information. The left hemisphere tends to handle language, logic, and analysis. The right hemisphere leans toward visual processing, emotion, and spatial awareness. When researchers showed different images to each eye, one feeding the left brain, the other feeding the right, strange things occurred. A patient might see a picture of a snowstorm with the left eye, processed by the right brain, and a chicken foot with the right eye, processed by the left brain. Then they'd be asked to point to related images. The left hand, controlled by the right brain, would point to a snow shovel. The right hand, controlled by the left brain, would point to a chicken. Each side knew what it had seen. Each side responded appropriately, but neither side seemed aware of what the other had done. Even more fascinating, when asked to explain their choices, patients would make up stories. The speaking left brain, unaware of the snow shovel chosen by the right hand, would invent a reason. Oh, the chicken lives in a barn, and you need a shovel to clean the coop. It didn't realize it was just guessing. This reveals something astonishing. The sense of a unified self might be an illusion. Our consciousness may feel whole, but underneath, it may be a patchwork. The brain stitches together thoughts, perceptions, and actions so smoothly that we rarely notice when things don't align. But in split-brain cases, the stitching is gone, and two minds emerge, living in one skull. This leads to a haunting question. Are there always two minds inside us? Are there many? And if so, who is really you? Some philosophers suggest that the brain is not a single thinker, but a committee, a chorus of subsystems, each handling part of the song. Consciousness, then, might be the narrator, the one telling the story after the choices have already been made. You choose the red shirt, then explain why. You feel hungry, then decide what to eat. But maybe the decision came first, and the story came later. Split-brain patients offer us a rare mirror. They show that the self is not fixed, that minds can divide and continue, that awareness is more flexible and more mysterious than we ever imagined. And yet, even in these divided minds, there is presence, there is experience, there is being point two selves, point one body, and the quiet awareness that watches both consciousness and the senses. Now, take a moment to feel everything around you, the air on your skin, the weight of your body, the distant hum of sound, the rhythm of your breath. Without your senses, the world would vanish. No colored, no sound, no texture, just stillness. Your senses are the windows through which your mind meets the world. But those windows are not passive. They don't simply receive reality, they build it. Your eyes don't show you the world as it is. They capture light, photons, bouncing off objects, and your brain translates that into color, depth, and shape. But there is no color in the photon. There is no blue in the sky itself. The blue lives in you. Your ears don't hear sound directly. They detect vibrations in the air, waves of pressure, and your brain transforms that into music, voices, emotion. A baby's laugh, a whisper in the dark, a passing storm. Touch is the same. You don't feel the world. You feel the nerves reacting to the world. Your brain interprets texture, pressure, temperature, and forms meaning. And what's most extraordinary is that your senses can disagree, and your mind will try to resolve it. In one famous illusion, people hear the same sound over and over, ba, ba, ba. But if the visual changes, if a mouth is seen making a fa sound, people begin to hear fa instead. That's not a trick. That's your brain adjusting reality based on expectations, trying to make sense of conflicting signals. This blending of perception is called multisensory integration, and it shows just how deeply your consciousness depends on the senses, not to receive truth, but to create experience. That you're not seeing the world as it is, that you're seeing the world as your brain thinks it is. And yet, it feels so real. The same goes for phantom limb syndrome. When someone loses an arm or leg, they often still feel it. They may feel itch, pain, or pressure in a limb that is no longer there, because the brain's map of the body still includes that limb, and consciousness follows the map, not the body. This tells us something profound. Your sense of the world, and even of yourself, is not anchored in physical truth. It is built by perception. It is guided by the senses, and sometimes by imagination. Smell is one of the oldest senses. It bypasses the rational brain and speaks directly to memory and emotion. One scent can bring back a childhood room, a person, a place you haven't seen in decades. Taste, too, is a form of remembering. It is shaped by culture, memory, mood. A meal shared with someone you love tastes better because the moment flavors the food. And there are senses we rarely talk about. Proprioception, your sense of your body in space. It's how you can touch your nose with eyes closed. Or walk without watching your feet. Interoception, the awareness of your internal state, hunger, thirst, heartbeat, breath. These sensations guide emotion, attention, even decision-making, without you noticing. All these layers, all these signals, are constantly flowing into the brain, and consciousness is what rises from the mix, not from any one sense, but from the combination, the symphony, the dance. If one sense is lost, like sight or hearing, the brain adapts. It rebalances. Other senses sharpen, because consciousness is not limited by any single path. It is flexible. resilient. Expansive.it is not the I that sees.it is you. Behind the EYE.it is not the ear that hears.it is the listener inside your mind, the witness, the dreamer, the feeler.s. Oh, next time you touch the bark of a tree, or hear a song drift through a window, or smell something that stirs your chest, remember, this moment, this vivid, quiet knowing, is your mind constructing reality, softly, gently, beautifully. Further, we can explore about the unconscious mind. Close your eyes. Notice your breathing, how it rises and falls without effort, that you're not choosing each breath. It simply happens, because deep within you, something is always working, even when you're unaware. This is the domain of the unconscious mind, a vast, silent force beneath the surface of thought that we often imagine consciousness as the tip of an iceberg, a small portion, floating above the waves. But beneath it lies an entire mountain of thought, memory, reaction, and intuition, massive, mysterious, constant. The unconscious isn't just where dreams come from, that it's where most of your mind lives. It keeps your heart beating, it regulates your hormones, it digests your food, and even more remarkably, it influences your emotions, decisions, and actions without you even knowing. Imagine walking into a room and instantly feeling tense. You don't know why, but something feels off. Later, you realize it smelled like the hospital room where you once had surgery. Your unconscious noticed first. It remembered before you did. This is how powerful it is. You could go years without thinking of a childhood song, and then one note plays, and suddenly, the entire memory floods back. The unconscious stores what you forget. It shapes how you feel. It colors your dreams. Freud, the early psychoanalyst, believed the unconscious was a place of hidden desires and repressed fears. But modern science sees it as more than that. Not just a shadowy vault, but a processing powerhouse. As you listen now, your brain is doing millions of things behind the scenes, filtering sounds, adjusting posture, scanning meaning in every word, that you're only conscious of a tiny sliver. Even decisions, once thought to be made consciously, often begin before awareness. In some studies, brain activity predicting a choice shows up seconds before the person becomes aware of making it. The unconscious decides, and the conscious mind justifies. But that doesn't make the conscious mind less important. It's like the captain of a ship, not rowing, not turning every gear, but choosing the course. When given the data, and sometimes, the unconscious speaks in symbols. This is what happens in dreams. A bird might represent freedom, a house might reflect the self, a storm might reveal unspoken conflict. The dream doesn't explain itself. It just shows you something. And it's not just in dreams. Your instincts, your gut feelings, your quick reactions. These are also expressions of unconscious intelligence. When you suddenly stop before stepping into the street, or when you get a strange feeling about someone you just met, that's your unconscious working in the background, weaving together signals you didn't notice and offering a quiet warning. You are always gathering more than you realize. The unconscious is the lens through which you experience the world, even if the lens is invisible, and yet it can be trained. Meditation, therapy, even journaling. These practices help bring parts of the unconscious into the light. You begin to see the patterns in your emotions. You notice the stories you keep repeating. You recognize the beliefs you didn't know you held. And in doing so, your awareness deepens. The conscious and the unconscious begin to align, like sunlight slowly reaching the floor of a forest, bringing light to roots that have grown in shadow. This doesn't make the unconscious disappear. It's too vast for that. But it does invite harmony, integration. You begin to feel whole, not pulled by unseen forces, but gently guided by deeper knowing. And perhaps this is what consciousness truly is, not a spotlight, but a bridge between the visible and the hidden, between thought and feeling, between waking and dreaming. You are not just the voice in your head. You are also the silence it emerges from. You are not just what you know. You are what listens, what waits, what is, dreams, and the dreaming brain. Close your eyes gently and imagine a place that doesn't exist, a hallway that loops into the sky, a house that shifts shape, a person with a face you've never seen, yet somehow you know them. This is the realm of dreams, where logic melts, time bends, and reality softens into something strange and beautiful. Each night, as you fall asleep, your brain begins to change. Waves of electrical activity slow down. Muscles grow still. Breath becomes rhythmic, and behind your closed eyes, another world awakens. Dreaming happens primarily during REM sleep, short for rapid eye movement. In this stage, your brain is highly active, almost as if you were awake. Your eyes dart beneath your eyelids. Your limbs become paralyzed and vivid. Imagery begins to form. Scientists still don't fully understand why we dream, but theories abound. Some believe dreams are a way of processing memories, sorting, filing, clearing emotional residue from the day. Others think dreams are simulations, the brain rehearsing survival scenarios in a safe environment. Still others view dreams as a byproduct of random neural activity, with consciousness simply trying to make sense of it. But whatever their origin, dreams feel real. The emotions are real. The fear, the joy, the wonder, and sometimes the message. Many ancient cultures believed dreams were portals, messages from the divine, gateways to other worlds. Today, we may not use the same language, but the mystery remains. Why do we forget so many dreams the moment we wake? Why do some dreams linger for years, carved into memory with vivid detail? And what about lucid dreaming? Those rare moments when you become aware within the dream. You realize this isn't real. I'm dreaming. And yet, the dream doesn't collapse. It continues, with you inside it, able to explore, observe, even shape the world around you. Lucid dreaming shows us something powerful, that consciousness can exist within the unconscious, that awareness is not limited to the waking world. Inside a lucid dream, you can fly, you can meet your childhood self, you can speak to parts of your own mind, and sometimes receive answers that feel more true than anything in the daylight. But even in non-lucid dreams, there is a kind of knowing that a dream may not follow logic, but it follows feeling. It takes symbols and wraps them into emotion. That a hallway may not just be a hallway. It may be your search for meaning. That a monster may not just be a fear. It may be your anxiety given shape. Your dreaming brain is a poet. It doesn't speak in facts. It speaks in images. In archetypes. In metaphor. And always in silence. You do not hear your dreams. You see them. You feel them. You know them. Dreams also remind us that the mind can create worlds, entire worlds, with no input from the senses. No light, no sound, no touch, just pure consciousness spinning. Story from silence. And this raises a question. If dreams can feel this real, how do we know we're awake? Philosophers have asked this for centuries. What if all of life is a dream, a stable, convincing illusion? René Descartes wondered if an evil demon was fooling him into believing the world was real. The Buddhists speak of the world as Maya, illusion. Modern thinkers propose simulations, that our reality may be artificial, like an immersive dream. But even if that were true, does it change the fact that we feel, love, think? Maybe reality is less about what's outside and more about what's experienced. And in dreams, experience reigns. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, know that your mind may carry you into a place where logic is soft, where emotion flows without boundaries, where the self dissolves and something deeper rises. Let your dreams carry you. Let them whisper what your waking mind forgets. Let them show you the layers of you that only emerge in the dark. Because even in dreams, especially in dreams, consciousness persists, watching, wandering, becoming. Consciousness and time. Take a slow breath in. Now let it out. That moment is already in the past, and yet you're still here, still you, still aware that we live in a river of moments. Each second passes, never to return, and yet, through it all, consciousness remains a thread that weaves through time, without ever truly touching it. But what is time? We measure it in clocks. In sunrises. In aging skin and changing seasons. But our experience of time, that is something else entirely. Sometimes a minute feels like an hour. Sometimes hours disappear in the blink of an eye. Time stretches when we wait, shrinks when we're immersed. It can slow in danger. It can vanish in dreams. And all of it is shaped by your consciousness. Your brain does not perceive time directly. There are no time receptors in the body. Instead, your sense of time is constructed, a blend of memory, attention, emotion, and rhythm. Think about it. When you're bored, you notice every passing second, the tick of a clock, the hum of a fan. Your mind has space to mark each instant. But when you're deeply engaged, lost in music, in writing, in love, time collapses. You look up, and hours have flown. This is called temporal distortion, and it reveals something profound. Time is not fixed inside us. It bends to the shape of awareness. And memory plays a key role that if you experience a new situation, like traveling to a foreign place, your brain takes in more detail. It stores more moments. Later, when you look back, it feels longer than it actually was. Routine, on the other hand, compresses memory. Days repeat, and blurred, so even though time passed, it feels like it vanished. This is why childhood summers seemed endless, and adult weeks flash by. Children are absorbing everything. Adults, filtered, so maybe time isn't what moves quickly. Maybe it's us, and consciousness is what holds it all together. Even in dreams, time behaves strangely. An entire story may unfold in seconds, or a single moment may loop endlessly. In near death experiences, people report life flashing before their eyes, not as a blur, but as a vivid, immersive journey outside of time, beyond the clock. What does that mean? It means your experience of time is flexible. It means you shape it, not just pass through it. Some philosophers and physicists even suggest that time may be an illusion, that past, present, and future coexist, that consciousness is what moves, not time itself. Imagine pages in a book. They're all there, but your mind moves from one to the next, creating the illusion of flow. You feel now, because now is where your awareness lands. This also opens strange questions. If time is flexible in the mind, is there such a thing as now for everyone? A bee lives only a few weeks. A tree, hundreds of years. A mayfly lives for just a single day. But, to each, their life feels full. Time is not measured by duration, but by experience. And so, your consciousness doesn't simply pass through time. It creates it, shapes it, fills it. Every moment you've ever lived exists now only in memory, and every moment yet to come exists only in imagination. But you are here. The awareness that links them. So when you watch a sunset, or hold someone's hand, or close your eyes and breathe, remember, you are not a passenger in time. You are its painter, its poet, its dreamer. And even as the seconds tick away, what matters is not how long, but how present you are within them. Because time fades, but awareness, the feeling of being, remains. The self, who is really in there. Take a slow, gentle breath and ask yourself, who am I? Not your name, not your job, not the roles you play. Child, sibling, parent, friend. But you, the part behind the eyes, the quiet observer inside that we spend our entire lives within ourselves. And yet, we rarely stop to ask what the self actually is. First, it seems obvious. You are you. You wake up in the same body each day. You remember your past. You make choices, feel emotions, tell stories. But when you begin to look closer, the self begins to blur. Is it your body? Your cells change constantly. The atoms that make up your skin, your bones, your organs, they come and go. The body you have now is not the one you had 10 years ago. So, if you're not the body, what are you? Maybe the self is your memories. They feel like a thread connecting past to present. But memory is fragile. It shifts, that we forget, that we misremembered. We sometimes create memories that never happened. If your memories were erased, would you still be you? Some say the self is your mind, your thoughts. But thoughts come and go. They arise, then vanish. They contradict each other. They change with mood, time, and experience. Can something so fleeting define who you are? So we look deeper. Maybe the self is not any one thought, but the awareness behind them. The silent witness, the part of you that notices your thoughts, the one who says, I am thinking. Not the thought itself, but the one who observes the thought. This is what some traditions call pure awareness. A presence that is always there, even when thoughts are not. You can feel it in meditation. In stillness. In moments when the world goes quiet and only presence remains. But even that awareness, does it have boundaries? When you look at another person, When you hear a bird sing or feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, where do you end and the world begin? In deep states of consciousness, during meditation, intense emotion, or spiritual experience, the sense of self can dissolve. People describe feeling one with everything. No separation, just being, just now. This is called non-duality, a perspective where the self is not separate from the universe, but part of it, like a wave, is not separate from the ocean. It rises, it falls, it moves, but it is always ocean, and maybe you are not a fixed thing, not an object, not a noun. You are a process. A verb. A constantly unfolding event. You are not the same person you were at age 5. Or 15. Or even yesterday. Yet, you persist, not because you stay the same, but because your awareness continues through change. And this is beautiful, because it means you are not trapped by who you were. You are allowed to evolve. To change. To soften. To become. The self is not a single candle. It is the flame passed from one moment to the next. And even though we spend our lives wondering, who am I? Maybe the more important question is, who am I becoming? And in the quiet of the night, beneath the thoughts, beneath the memories, beneath the name and face and history, there is something still, something peaceful, something whole. That is you. Let's take one more slow, calming breath and allow ourselves to drift into the quiet moments, the in-between, the edge of waking and sleep, that strange space where consciousness begins to dim. Because as much as we explore what consciousness is, we learn just as much by noticing what happens when it fades. Each night, we experience a natural disappearance of awareness. Sleep, you lie down. The world begins to soften. Thoughts unravel. And eventually, something changes. There is a moment. You don't remember it. When the eye slips away, you stop being the thinker. You stop being the watcher. You simply are not gone, not dead, just shifted. Your consciousness goes quiet, and another part of the mind takes over. Sleep is not just rest. It is one of the deepest mysteries in biology. Why do we have to sleep? Why do we spend a third of our lives in this vulnerable, inactive state? And more importantly, where does our awareness go? Dreams arise, images flicker, but the conscious, self-aware part of the mind vanishes. This tells us something critical. Consciousness is not always on. It has a switch. Or maybe a dimmer. Now think of anesthesia, a scientifically induced disappearance of consciousness. When you undergo surgery, doctors don't just block pain. They carefully shut down the parts of the brain responsible for awareness. Sight goes, sound disappears, even time stops. You don't dream, you don't feel, you don't remember. Then, at some unknown signal, the switch is flipped. You rise again. No memory. No sensation of the passage of time. Just a gap, a blank page in the story of the self. And yet, your body continued. Your heart beat. Your lungs breathed. Your brain stayed alive. What was missing? Only one thing. The witness, the inner presence, the consciousness. This suggests something powerful. That consciousness is not required for survival, but it's essential for experience. Then there are more mysterious edges, like coma, when consciousness is not gone, but unreachable. Or locked-in syndrome, where a person is fully awake inside, but completely unable to move or speak. Or vegetative states, where the eyes may open, but no one seems to be home. In all these cases, science still struggles to understand. Where is the line between consciousness and unconsciousness? Is it a light switch or a slow gradient? The truth seems to be, it's more like a dimming sun, not off, just fading, shifting, reorganizing. Even in sleep, parts of the brain remain active. Even in anesthesia, some level of sensation may flicker. Even in coma, dreams may form. The boundary is not clean, and that's what makes it mysterious. Some patients in comas have awakened years later, reporting vivid mental experiences they couldn't express. Others recall dreams during anesthesia. Some speak of floating outside the body, a phenomenon called near-death experience. Science hasn't fully explained these moments, and maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe what matters is the simple truth they reveal, that consciousness is fragile, and yet resilient. It can vanish. But under the right conditions, it returns, like a sunrise after a long night. As you listen now, Know that the very act of listening, of being aware, is precious. You are conscious. You are here. And though that light may dim each night, or in silence, or in sleep, it always finds its way back. And in that return, there is something sacred, a reminder that every moment of awareness is a gift. Mirror test and the spark of awareness. As we come to the end of our journey, there's one final question to ask. Are we the only ones who are aware? Not just alive, not just intelligent, but conscious, aware of the self, able to look inward and say, I am me. This is one of the most profound mysteries in science and philosophy. And to explore it, we begin with a simple object, a mirror. Place a mirror in front of most animals, and they will react with curiosity, sometimes aggression, sometimes confusion, but some do something different. They look, then they reach up, not toward the mirror, but toward themselves. They scratch a mark on their forehead. They examine their teeth. They tilt their head, watching their reflection as them, not another animal, but themselves. This is called the mirror test, first used in the 1970s to detect self-recognition, that a mark is placed on an animal, some paint or sticker they can't feel or smell. Then they're shown a mirror if they touch the mark on their own body. It suggests they recognize the reflection as themselves. Only a few animals pass: great apes, elephants, dolphins, magpies, some ants, and very few humans, until around 18 months of age. The first time a baby passes the mirror test, they suddenly realize that's me. It's a shift, a spark, a moment when self-awareness emerges. Before that, the world is undivided, a blur of sensation and reaction. Then, suddenly, there is self. It raises a question. Does consciousness begin when we recognize our own reflection? Or does that awareness already exist, and the mirror simply reveals it? Some researchers argue the mirror test is too limited, that it misses other forms of intelligence. That a dog may not recognize itself in a mirror, but it knows the scent of its owner. It shows empathy, fear, love. Octopuses solve puzzles. Crows plan ahead. Bees vote. Whales sing songs that spread across oceans. Maybe the spark of awareness burns in more places than we assume. Maybe consciousness is not binary, on or off, but a spectrum. A sea with many depths. And if that's true, we may be surrounded by minds that think differently, minds we can't yet understand. Even plants respond to light, sound, and touch. They move, they remember, they warn each other of danger. Are they conscious or simply reactive? Where is the line? And what about machines? We've built computers that can write poems, paint pictures, play chess, and talk like humans. Are they conscious? Not yet. Science says they mimic awareness, but they don't feel, not in the way we do. Still, the boundary is shifting, and it forces us to ask, what is required for consciousness? Is it memory, emotion, creativity, or is it something we still haven't found? In the end, maybe the mirror isn't just a test. Maybe it's a symbol, because the greatest mirror of all is each other. We see ourselves in other people. In their faces. In their joy. In their pain. When we see a stranger cry and feel moved, that's awareness meeting awareness. When a parent looks at their child and sees not just a body, but a soul, a presence, a being, that's the mirror test passed in the truest way. And when you look inward, when you stop thinking and just are, you see yourself not as an object, but as experience itself. This is the final mystery. That consciousness is not just a thing we have. It is what we are. Everything else, the body, the thoughts, the roles, those are just costumes. But underneath, there is a quiet light. It flickers. Behind your eyes. It feels without speaking. It knows without thinking. That light is not bound by words. It existed before language, before memory, before the mirror, and it will be with you. Even when your eyes are closed, even when your mind is quiet, even when you forget everything else. That is you. As this journey comes to a close, let the mystery remain, not to frustrate, but to invite. Invite wonder. Invite stillness. Remind you that every time you ask, who am I? You're not seeking an answer. You're entering a deeper presence. And if you ever forget who you are, just listen. Your breath. Your heart. The silence between thoughts. That is the mirror. And in it, You are always home. Take one last breath that you've traveled far, not in distance, but in depth, into the space of thought, into the core of experience, into the heart of the self. You've explored the inner galaxy, and you've returned, not with answers, but with awareness. That if this journey moved you, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. What part stayed with you? What question still lingers? And if there's a mystery you'd like to explore next, leave a suggestion. This channel, Science Beyond Sleep, is here for minds like yours, wandering, curious, quietly wide awake. Please consider subscribing to join me on future adventures inward. And if this helped you drift towards sleep, rest easy. You are not alone in the mystery. You are part of it. Good night.